Welcome to Garden Grounds. We'll get started in 30 seconds. If you have questions with respect to gardening, of course, please go ahead and put them into the chat and we will get started shortly. All right, we're ready to start. Garden Grounds. I do this public Q&A every second and fourth Thursday at 11 a.m. If you like this format, where I basically just take your questions on vegetable gardening, answer them the best I can, I have a perk membership, first level tier, $3.99. I do this format 4 or 5 times a month, plus some other things. And it's really a chance for you to sort of have a garden mentor as you're growing for the season. Check in, ask your questions, and I will help you out. The group of gardeners and perk memberships are a wonderful group. They answer a lot of questions too, and you get to meet people throughout the United States. All right, let me get the chat set up here, and we'll get started. Today's light topic is going to be on your cool weather crops. Just came in 5 minutes ago, actually, so I'm a little frazzled. It's raining out, but I'm getting my onion beds planted outside the garden. Deer don't eat those. I'll be doing a video on that. I'm shooting it today. It'll be out tonight. All right, so let's take a look at what questions people have. And I thank you. I didn't ask if you can see and hear me, which I always do because sometimes I mess up things, but Noco's already answered that, so thanks. All right, so drop your questions in with question in front of it so I can pick it out of the chat. I'll stay on for about 30 to 45 minutes. If you want to use a super chat, I will answer that with priority. Can you reuse, well, we'll start up here. Again, make sure you put question in front. How can I deal with compacted clay, rich soil? I'm converting an overgrown flower bed into a vegetable bed and wondering what options are year one other than tilling. It may be pretty good. You know, if you don't till, tilling is the machine that comes in and just grinds everything up and chops it up a whole lot. That can be problematic. If you need to till for the first year or two to get your bed set up, it's fine. The microbes and life and all that will come back and it'll be okay. With a shovel, you can turn the soil. You can use a broad fork, put it in, rock back and forth, aerate it a little bit. But turning it with a shovel and big chunks of earth isn't going to do that much damage. Yes, it messes up, in theory, some of the strata of microbes and stuff like that. But they're smart. They've been around millions of years. They'll figure it out and they fix themselves. So it's good to put down on top of that maybe some peat moss, compost, turn the soil over, loosen it up a little bit, and you can go right into planting. If you don't want to disturb the soil at all, you can kind of just level it out how you want. If you have compost, always put that on top. That's great. Sometimes it's hard to get quality compost or make enough on your own. But where you're going to plant, like if you're putting in a transplant, just dig out a hole, put in some quality stuff there, mix the compost with the earth you take out, tablespoon of organic granular fertilizer, basically make the planting hole, put the transplant in that, and that will be fine for that transplant to take off and grow. Over time, root systems will break up the clay from the plants. If you keep putting compost on top, earthworms and stuff will come through and loosen it up. But don't be afraid to take a shovel, just turn it, amend it. If you got to take care of your soil year one, year two, even year three by turning or tilling, it's okay. Then you let it go once it's in shape. Can you reuse seed mix in cells that no seeds germinated from? Yes, you can, absolutely. Whatever's left, I just bang into a little pail, let it dry, maybe fluff it up a little bit later, add in some more seed starting mix or whatever, but it's good to go. You can use it again. And then you'll see people with the stars and circles. Those are perk members. Question, I started onions from seed. I'm ready to plant them out. What should I do? What should I put in the hole where I plant them? Bone meal? So any just general, bone meal takes a while to break down. So if you put bone meal down, which is high in phosphorus, that's going to give a little bit this year, but it takes a long time. It's not going to really help a whole lot till next year. So any organic granular fertilizer that has N, P, and K represented is perfectly fine for the onions. When you put in your transplants, give them a quick water of a water-soluble fertilizer. in about, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, give them another drink of the water soluble, and that should be plenty to get them started and growing. And I actually am shooting a video on that right now. That's where I came in from, and that will be out tonight. Good morning. When do I stop harvesting my third year asparagus? Harvested about 4 or 5 times now. Delicious, getting thicker. So that's hard to say. I mean, if it's really producing, and basically the spears come up, you harvest them, you eat them. But you need spears to come up and get to full size, like 4 feet, and fern out, and then recharge the root system over the summer. So my asparagus hasn't even started yet, except for some of the green asparagus, the Mary Washington, I think. 4 or 5 times is a lot. But if it's a really established bed and the spears are just coming up like crazy, you could probably go one more time. But it's hard for me to really answer that without seeing the patch and knowing the patch. And the idea is that you really don't want to be harvesting like here in Maryland, like well into June. Like at some point I need to stop in May and let those spears grow into, full size asparagus. Rob the gardener. I purchased compost from a local nursery in southern Maryland. There are mushrooms growing in it for now. Are there any mushrooms I should be concerned about? No, I mean, unless you eat them, certainly don't do that. I actually shot a video this week. I got to put it together, but I built a mushroom bed in my garden for wine-capped mushrooms. So if you don't know what the mushrooms are, obviously don't eat them. But mushrooms growing in compost isn't really an issue. That's kind of a sign it's doing what it's supposed to do. Maybe if they're growing by leafy greens or something you eat without washing, you could be concerned, but not really. Dorothy, when can seedlings, young plants be moved to the windowsills instead of under shop lights? Peppers were planted on 227 and doing great, 4 or 5 inches tall. So that they can probably go to the windows now. Once your plants get to a good, 4 inches, your tomatoes, peppers, maybe 5, a little bit more, they're not as dependent on the lights. I even put some next to my lights on the floor because I need the space under there. But you can start transitioning them when they're, let's just say, about 5 inches tall. The light is most important when they're germinating and breaking the surface. They need to be hit by intense light so they don't stretch and get leggy and fall over. All right, let's see. Got to just find out where I left off here. So this does really start hopping, and I'm not going to be able to answer everybody's question. If you see that I missed your question, please post it again at the bottom. And again, if you do a super chat, I will answer with priority, and I'll stay on for 30 or 45 minutes. All right, Evelyn, big problem with slugs. Used the slug bait, thought they were gone, but last year they were under the zucchini, in the roots, destroyed all of them on the squash. Any suggestions? So slug bait works well. It has, and I recommend the baits, doesn't matter what brand, but the brands that have iron phosphate as the main ingredient or sulfur. Slugs eat it, they die. You have to keep doing this about every month. Like if you have a slug and snail problem, now's a great time to spread it out throughout your garden. Kill off the slugs before all your leafy greens, get really big and stuff like that. But you have to stay up on it, and you have to do it monthly. If it's not working and you've got slugs under zucchinis and squash and stuff like that, I would probably go with the beer traps. Just get little foil baking trays, set them near the snails and slugs wherever they are, pour in some beer, they crawl into it, they die out. That's a good way to get rid of them quickly. But I've had success just using the slug baits, monthly. Diana, have you tried to compost in black refuse bags? What materials can you use? I'm not sure if you're talking about like putting them in a garbage bag and letting them kind of rot. You can do that with leaves. Like I've filled up big black bags with leaves. You got to poke holes in the bottom, and in the top you want water to get in there. And you want drainage just in case too much water gets in there. But leaves do really well in that. If you ever, cut grass and you put it in a bag, it smells really bad, like in, 24 hours. So you can't have a whole lot of fresh cut greens. So in those bags, it should either be like all leaves that you let sit for a year and it breaks down into great leaf compost. The other reason you want holes in that is so worms crawl into there and break it down. But a combination of green and brown, maybe like, I don't know, 60-70% browns, dried stuff, and 30% green stuff mixed in a bag does pretty well. I've not really done that actively with greens in it, so you have to be concerned that it's going to smell and become anaerobic. So, I'm not the best person to ask for that question, but leaves, I've definitely done that. Now, with the spring and summer coming, all that material I would compost just in piles like I have throughout my garden. Question: how many asparagus spears do I leave to grow in my mature patch? 2 or 3 per plant? All the thin ones? I usually leave too many and it gets crowded. I'm not really sure. I think 2 is too few. I'd say somewhere between 3 and 5. And it's, 3 and 5, maybe not quite 5, but coming out of the root system. And if you have lots of tangled roots in different plants, it may seem like a lot. Once your asparagus plant has grown up like 4 feet and it's too big or you have issues, you can trim it then too. You don't have to worry about getting the right amount of spears coming up. All right, make sure you put question in front, but I saw this one. I noticed grubs last fall in my raised bed garden house. I plan to use beneficial nematodes before I plant in the spring. Should we also think about putting this treatment on our entire lawn? I don't think so. I don't treat for grubs. When I was digging today and this week, I'm finding grubs all over the place. Grubs aren't necessarily bad. Here in Maryland, we have lots of Japanese beetles, so they're in the lawn. Milky spore works really good for those if you're concerned. I don't really treat for them unless you're having an issue with grubs attacking the roots of your plants and causing damage that you know of. There's really no need to treat it. If you have a space like in your garden house, yeah, that might make sense. You just want to kind of control what's going on in there. But as for the full garden and the lawn and stuff like that, that would be a lot of extra expense and work for me that I just don't find as necessary. All right, let me pause there. So I wanted to talk about cool weather crops. So my leafy greens are in, broccoli's in, all my cool weather crops. First round have been put in. We had our last frost 2 days ago, did kill my upper growth on my potato plants, damaged some pea plants. It was like 28 degrees over a 5 or 6 hour period. Overall, things survived. The potatoes will come back. The peas are going to be fine. But now that my leafy greens have been growing, my radishes have been growing, all the cool weather crops have been growing, in about a week, I'm going to do my next planting, a succession planting as seeds. So I have, for instance, radishes that have been growing probably for 3 or 4 weeks. They're about this size now. They're going to mature soon. So now I want to put in seeds. So after I harvest those radishes, the new radishes will be ready in like 5 or 6 weeks from now. And that's succession planting. Like if you planted 1,000 radishes at once, you got to eat 1,000 radishes. If you put in 20 heads of romaine lettuce, they're going to mature pretty much at the same time. You're going to have a lot of romaine to eat. And the best way to deal with that is do it in groups, like 5 romaine, a couple weeks later, more seeds, some more romaine, a couple weeks later, some more romaine. Cool weather crops, you're always aiming to get them to maturity before the heat of late spring, early summer rolls in, depending on where you live, because they don't like the warm weather. They tend to bolt and flower. So succession planting is one of the things I wanted to talk about. Radishes can go in by seed, spinach, beets, turnips, lettuces, endive, arugula. You can all direct seed those right now and it'll be fine. Stuff that would be difficult to grow now from seed is broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels. The plants that take longer to mature and form these nice heads, or in the case, the Brussels, because once it gets warm, it impacts how they grow. And if you don't have cool weather for your broccoli or cauliflower, it just flowers into this big bloom, and you don't get a nice head of broccoli. So you're getting close to the timing wise where if you want to plant broccoli, cauliflower, and you have an extended cooler spring, you definitely want to use transplants. If you don't have them, you're going to have to buy them. The other plants that you can plant by seed right now are also kale and, why did I forget, collards. Derek, who is a new member, welcome. He has a blue star. That's how I know that he's a new perk member. So Lowe's has a sale on garden soil meant for in-ground gardens. Is there anything I can add to it to make it usable for raised beds? So I really recommend you go to my channel and you look up bag soil products. I have a bunch of them. It's going to explain what's in them, why they're more expensive. Garden soil, first of all, there's no such thing as a raised bed mix when you see it. Garden soil just means it doesn't have as much peat moss as their potting mixes and stuff that you see in the bags. So you can take garden soil, add in peat moss, add in compost, fluff it up with those materials, and you're pretty much doing the same thing as companies do in the bag products. However, make sure the garden soil is not filled with shredded wood. And I actually have a video on my channel now why bagged garbage soil is, hold on, small issue here, why bagged topsoil is garbage. You have to open these products up or look for a torn bag. They're filling them with shredded hardwood, and when you mix that into your soil and try and grow, the shredded hardwood takes nitrogen for a year or two from your plants to decompose and break down. The microbes are using it. So you really want to make sure you're buying good stuff. But if it's a good quality garden soil, you can add peat moss into it. You can buy a bale of that. You can add in cocoa coir if you don't want to use peat moss. Add in compost, combination of all three. But you can really build your container and bed soils from basic quality topsoil, quality garden soil, and then adding in peat moss or cocoa coir and compost, and it'll save you a lot of money. Christina asked, can I start peppers and celery in zone 5B? I don't see why not. The question is, all my peppers are going outside now. So if you're behind us and it's colder and they can't really get into the ground for, 2 months, 8 weeks, something like that, go ahead and start them by seed. If it's getting close to the point where you can start planting in like 4 weeks or 6 weeks, you probably want to buy pepper transplants so that they get to a good size and produce over the season. And then celery, you can certainly start. Fungus gnats are a problem. I use boiling water, treat my seed starting mix. That helps. Brought in a bunch of cuttings and used soil from outside, which I knew was going to be a risk. Got fungus gnats. You can use mosquito bits and mix them into the water, bottom water, let them dissolve in there. And that brings in a bacteria that kills off the larva. So the mosquito bits does work. It's going to take a while for it to work and kind of kill the cycle off. Hanging the yellow traps helps. Just get rid of some of the adults. And at this point, you're probably just trying to manage down damage, get rid of as many as you can until you get your plants outside. The issue with the fungus gnats is indoors, there's no natural predators or anything, so they just go crazy. You can also buy a spray. This is where I buy a harsh chemical spray. You're not going to be eating them like this. Spray the soil real quick, kill the adults. The plant's getting outside, go back to your organic ways, and you save a fiasco from happening. Sometimes the chemical products have a purpose and a use if you use them sensibly. Outbreaks and stuff like that is a good time to use them. All right. Travis, I use Fox Farm Light Warrior Seed Start Mix. It has NPK nutrients. Should I start fertilizing when my seedlings get to 1 to 2 sets of true leaves? Or should I start after 2 or 3 weeks? I usually recommend after germination, 10 to 14 days, water with a water soluble fertilizer. But my mix doesn't have any NP and K in it or nutrients because I use a sterile starting mix. So I don't see why you couldn't wait um, 2 or 3 weeks. Now, if it's taking 2 or 3 weeks for your plants to get the second set of leaves, they might just be slow growers, but you have NP and K in there, so 2 or 3 weeks is fine. Dorothy, I was given a Chicago fig. Is it true that the roots can become problematic and need to be 10 to 20 feet from other trees, pipes, foundations, etc.? Do they need 6 hours of light in Maryland? They're going to need at least 6 hours of light in Maryland or more. Mine get full sun. I have never heard of the roots being problematic, that they can't be near other trees or foundations. If there's a lot of body of evidence saying that's a problem, I would go with that. But I'm not aware of any issue with it. I had a fig growing right against my house for like 10 years and didn't notice any issues with it. Elisa. First time growing my own transplants. When do I move tomato plants to the garden outside? So after about 6 or 8 weeks of growth indoors, those tomato transplants are ready to go outside. Anytime that you're growing something indoors, it is not used to the sun. It doesn't know what the UV rays are. It's not used to wind, temperature changes. So you have to go from inside to outside slowly over a week's time. Slowly expose it to the plants to the sun. They build up tolerance to the UV rays of the sun, and then they're ready to go out into the garden. You also want them to go out into the garden. I don't know where you're at, but depending on when you started, you want the danger of frost to be gone. You really want the nights to be about 50 degrees regularly or higher, and that's when the soil is starting to get warmer, and that's the general guidelines I give people. You cannot. So I'm actually growing. Can you use cabbage left over from kitchen to grow new cabbage? You can grow leaves. It's not going to grow a cabbage. It's also going to grow very slowly. And it's going to grow much more slowly than you putting seeds in a cup and starting your new plants. So you see these videos all the time. Celery, carrots, onions, cabbage. And they say, put them in a thing of water. They're going to root out. First of all, you're never going to get a new carrot. You're only going to get carrot tops. The celery, yes, you'll get some leafiness, but they have a hard time rooting. You're putting all this energy into trying to grow something from a food scrap, which is cool, but it doesn't really translate into anything useful. Now, there might be one person in 100 that figure this out and it does really well, but 99 times out of 100, they're not going to do well. They don't have a root system. So if you put them outside and it's hot for a day, there's no roots bringing the water in. They're not like sitting in that bowl in your house. So I would say skip the cabbage. Necknud. I made a raised bed out of pressure-treated wood from Home Depot. Should I be concerned with chemicals leaching out into my soil and crops? No. This is my opinion. Somebody just blasted me for using it, saying that it had arsenic in it and all that stuff. That was true like 20, 30 years ago. Now they use copper. Yes, some leaching occurs in the wood. In order for you to get anything harmful from that leaching wood, and it's very minimal, like I've done a lot of research, I'm comfortable with it. In order for you to be harmed by anything in that wood, it would kill the plants off way before you could harvest and eat them. So, that's, yes, there's truth that stuff can leach from pressure-treated wood. There's an overblown concern that what comes out of it gets into the plant, you eat it, and it's bad for you. It really is, and I don't have links or anything like that, but you can look up research and try and find it. You want to go to colleges and stuff, or places that are legit, and read about pressure treated wood or leaching. Anyway, For the chemicals to come out, and again, to get to that level that would be harmful to us, the plants would be killed way before we could ever eat them. So I'm fine with using it. Lost treasure. Can I plant the same crop several years on the road if I renew dirt every time that I do that? I'm not sure what you mean by on the road, if you want to clarify that, but the answer is yes. In a home garden, rotating crops doesn't do much because insects and diseases travel. For nutrients, sometimes people rotate crops for nutrient reasons, but if you are putting in compost and you're mending the soil, you can kind of plant the same crop in there. The only time you might want to move a crop, if you got something very specific to a tomato plant root disease in that bed, and then you want to move those tomatoes to another area. But that is very, very rare. And then for the cool weather crops, the light topic, just for people that are new, these crops like the colder weather, they can take 40-degree nights. Cold temperatures, they still grow. They like that. They can take a frost. They can take a freeze. So now is really the time to be getting those outside into your garden. Like I said, my garden's fully planted up. As it begins to warm in the spring, you can do a lot of stuff by seed. So don't feel like you have to spend a lot of money on transplants. Some things I recommend, you can buy transplants like kale, lettuce, spinach. In my opinion, if they come in 6-packs, maybe they're $5 or $6, $1 a plant. A little pricey, but it's a convenience. Just don't go to Home Depot and Lowe's and you'll see one lettuce plant in a container for like $5 or $6. They're just ripping you off. Same thing with a single kale plant. You're paying $5 or $6. You're better off buying a pack of seeds for $2. I have a seed and garden shop. I sell all my seeds $1.75 for tomatoes and peppers. All other seeds are $1.50 a pack. Get yourself a pack of seeds. They're going to last 3 or 4 years. Keep them in a Ziploc bag. But you can direct seed spinach, lettuce, kale, collards, all that stuff that you might be paying $5 for a plant. And a seed is like less than a penny. And, you're going to save a lot of money. Can you add mushrooms to your compost pile? You definitely can add mushrooms to your compost pile. Shani, just moved to Maryland. Welcome. And guys, make sure you put question in front, but I did see this one. Can I start my collards from seed now, or should I wait till fall? I just answered that. You can definitely do your collards now. Collards will grow into the summer. Kale will grow through the summer. Doesn't taste as good. Collards will flower, but I would go ahead and give it a try. You can also put up shade cloth over your cool weather crops. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about. If you have a lot of crops that are growing and are not quite ready, and it's starting to get hot into the 70s, into the 80s, 60 degrees at night, you can put shade cloth over your cool weather crops. That will keep the soil cooler, and that will give them more time to mature. Sean, any advice for blueberries going into a container? No, they do really well. Once they're growing and leafed out and it's getting hot, you really just have to keep up on the water and on the feeding, but they do well in containers. Starting peppers from seeds for the first time, how long do they take to germinate? I noticed my tomatoes germinate after 5 to 7 days. It looks like peppers are just starting to pop. Tomatoes take 5 to 7 days at like 65 degrees Fahrenheit, 18.2 degrees Celsius. Peppers can take anywhere from like 10 to 21 days, depending on what you're growing. The only plants I ever do a heat mat with sometimes are peppers. That just speeds up germination. But in household temperature, about 10 to 21 days. How much water in AgroThrive would you put on a 4x8 bed of carrots and beets? I don't know. So, and AgroThrive I'm affiliated with, I recommend. Can't recall the dosage off the top of my head. But just prep the water, as AgroThrive suggests. I even sometimes say use like 2/3 the dose, save yourself a little bit of money. And you're just going over the carrots, like 1, 2, 3, like real quick. That's actually too much. Like I would just go down a row. Let's see if I can do this at about like this speed. And that's plenty of nutrients. So as much as you can get, at that speed a little bit faster, you're just soaking the top of the soil, getting a little bit of the nutrients in. You don't have to pour, my point is, like a gallon on a little grouping of the carrots. You're just going across real quick, letting the water soluble fall onto the carrots or whatever you're growing. Dorothy, why are you making a mushroom bed rather than spreading the spawn along wood mulch next to the beds or in beds of tomato? Well, good question. Is because the wood along my beds and all over the place is old, and it stopped providing nutrients to my wine caps. So I had wine caps done that way. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking a corner of the garden and it's straw, it's cardboard straw, shredded hardwood, wood pellets, and kind of a lasagna. That's where all the spawn is going. That will establish, mushrooms will come up there. And then when I add in the hardwood chips as I get them, I don't have a whole lot right now, throughout the rest of my bed, that will be the starting point for the mycelium and the mushrooms to kind of move out through the rest of the garden. I'm also putting this into a place where my old fig tree is that doesn't produce but creates shade. So it's just a perfect area for sun and shade for the mushrooms to grow. Electroculture, from what I understand, and I've known people that tried it, does nothing. It's just an extra expense and extra time. But I have not done it myself. Marie, can tomato plants grow fully from seed to harvest in a greenhouse? What are good foods to completely grow in a greenhouse? Anything that doesn't need pollination can grow in a greenhouse. Tomatoes and peppers are self-pollinating. You might want to give them a shake. Cucumbers, squash, zucchini, they need pollinators. So, you just have to keep in mind, whatever you're growing, if it needs a pollinator, do you have pollinators coming in, or you're going to have to hand pollinate? There's cucumbers that are designed for greenhouses that self-pollinate, but that would be the biggest tip. I mean, theoretically, you could grow mushrooms from store-bought mushrooms, but I'd like to buy the spawn. It's usually mixed in sawdust or grain or a combination of both. You have all the white mycelium, it's good to go. Wine capped mushrooms are the easiest to grow. They like growing in the medium that I just talked about. If you're buying other mushrooms from places and you put, bits and pieces into your garden, they have to, one, be in a position to, let's just say, multiply, and they may or may not be, but they also need the right materials to grow on. And if you don't have that, they're not going to grow. Start your carrots now. I started my carrots actually 3 or 4 weeks ago. And you have time. Jerry is a new member to Perk memberships. Please welcome him or her. The mic volume is all the way up. So I'll move the microphone closer, but it's up as high as it'll go on this side here. All right, I got to find where I left off here. Where are we at? Oh, we're at 11:33, so we're going to wrap up in 10 minutes. So I'm not going to be able to get to all your questions. So again, this public Q&A, Garden Grounds, I do every second and fourth Thursday at 11 a.m. and I stay on 30 to 45 minutes. I also have Perk memberships, $3.99 a month. I do this format 4 or 5 times a month. The group is small, usually like 20 or 30 people. I stay on for an hour. I answer all your garden questions. Next to my video, or in any of my videos, you'll see a join button. That's how you can join Perk memberships. And you can see all the people today with stars and circles. They are Perk members. All right. I enjoyed the interview with Nate from Garden Like a Viking. So, or the live that we did. And hopefully we do something in the future. All right, I'm going back up here to find out where I left off. Give me a sec. All right, so there is a lot going on. All right, find out where I was. Any guidance on helping blueberries to get going? 7A container. Water soluble fertilizer for sure for your blueberries, but an acidic water soluble can help them. The acidity just lowers the pH and helps them absorb nutrients. But if the pH of your container soil is fine, any good drink of a water soluble fertilizer will help them out. Any container plant. Does 2-year-old wood mulch leach nitrogen from the soil? Let me just clarify it. It doesn't leach nitrogen. Leach means goes out of. Or let me just make sure I'm not correcting you wrong. Yeah, there's nothing leaching from the wood. What happens is the wood has to be broken down and the microbes go to it to break it down, and the microbes actually need nitrogen to multiply and do their thing. So they're taking nitrogen from the soil. So 2-year-old wood mulch, if it's still big chips or whatever you have, and you mix it into your soil, it can cause a problem with nitrogen, wanting to use the nitrogen. If you ever, shredded hardwood's a little bit different. That's usually taken care of in a year or two from the microbes. But if it's big wood chips or bigger particles, it can cause a problem for a long time. Wood chips on top of the soil does not take nitrogen. It's when you mix it through that top 4-6 inches that it becomes a problem. What is the best way to clean, recycle, refresh last year's potting soils from grow bags? I have a ton of videos on that, so I do recommend going and just looking at refreshing container mix, refresh soil, container mixes. But basically, if it's been 2 or 3 years, I bang them out into a tarp. I throw in some fresh compost, some peat moss, hand tossing organic granular, mix it through, fluff it up, put it back into the containers. I mean, you don't need specific ratios or whatever. Just look at your eyeball with your eyes, eyeball it, and if it looks pretty good, it's good to go. You do not have to throw away old potting mix. That will cost you a lot of money. Lost treasure. Can I plant the same crop for several years? Oh, I answered that before. We got that one. What bag soil do you prefer for GreenStalks? You want a potting mix. However, like I've been saying, a lot of these potting mixes now have shredded wood in there. So you want a potting mix that is more peat-based, holds water, is loose, and go ahead and do that. I make my own. I take 50% of my earth, 50% peat moss, mix it together as a base mix, and then I'll take that, whatever I'm going to fill the container with, take that, throw in some compost, mix it together, and it works really well. That's just a way to save money. Jay, what do you think would be a good choice for summer greens that won't bolt early? I have kale starting. So kale is always a good one. Swiss chard will last. Endives are pretty good. Arugula bolts, spinach bolts, lettuce bolts. I mean, I like the endives, kale, and what was the other one? Endives, kale, and Swiss chard. I recently bought a grapevine on impulse, but I don't have the permanent place set. Can I pot them up? You can pot them up for this year. A grapevine is eventually going to want to grow a long, deep root that goes down like 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet. So you can grow them in a container for now and move it next year. I do have a recipe for making my own seed starting mix. I change it, but go to my channel and just look up seed starting mix, and you'll find see a bunch of them. So growing scraps for seeds would be a good use. like carrots, carrot cuttings. How do you harden off plants in a windy weather? How long should the wind speed be when putting plants out for the first time? I mean, if it's like 20 miles an hour or less, it's fine. If it's past 20, I would just not put them out. But the wind blowing on them will kind of toughen them up too. Where are we at? All right, 5 minutes left. I'll answer as many as I can. 7B. Already seeing munched up leaves. Is it caterpillars? Third-year gardener. Should I be concerned? No, it's probably snails and slugs. I would buy the snail and slug bait we talked about a little bit earlier that has either iron phosphate in it or sulfur, and scatter them around, and that will help take care of the problem. Z. Does a higher elevation and shorter season mean I won't be able to grow certain things? Yes. Usually plants are dependent upon growth between temperatures, like frost to frost, or, really lowering in temperatures where it gets too cold. So if you're growing warm weather crops, you need a big enough window for the plants to mature and grow. I mean, you can probably grow a whole lot, but some things, if you're starting by seed or you're planting too late, may not mature before your frost and cold comes in. So tires, I haven't really researched about what leaches out of a tire, so I can't answer that. But I did, do research with the pressure-treated lumber, which is, a different chemical nowadays than 30 years ago, and I'm comfortable with the lumber. With the tires, I don't know. Sean, your broccoli and cabbage is producing leaves. No guidance. There's nothing you can do. It sounds like you're taking care of them, and you're just waiting for the plant to do its thing, but you can't speed up, the formation of the broccoli or the formation of the cabbage. Have you ever grown ichikaiki? I have not. Yeah, mosquito bits are safe to use indoors. I've used them before. What bag soil do you prefer for a GreenStalk? We talked about that. All right, let's see where we're at. 3 minutes. See what I can do here in 3 minutes. Annette, I will respect what you said, and if it's working, that's great. What I've seen, it's not effective, so certainly share with people how it's helping your plants. Very interesting. Here in Michigan, I planted raspberries a couple weeks ago, and today we got about an inch of snow. Will they survive? They will survive, no worries. All right, so Andrea says, I've had no success germinating Queen of the Prairie. Do you have any advice? No, I'm actually waiting for mine to germinate. Just coincidentally, I'm seed starting it, and it may just take a while. If the peppers, it may be too late to start peppers from seeds if they're ready to go into your garden in the next 4 or 6 weeks. I mean, theoretically, if you have a long season and you can harvest peppers until like late September or something before the cold comes, you could start peppers by seed, but it's getting pretty close. I don't know if you need to be careful with your dog. My dog doesn't eat it. It's usually scattered. You don't pile it up, so it's hard for an animal to get a bunch of it. It also has iron phosphate or sulfur. If you're worried, I would go with the sulfur bait. That's probably more friendly to an animal if they eat a lot. All right, so the next public garden grounds is April 24th at 11 a.m. I'm going to be talking, the light subject will be tomato tips, but it's really for, this format, answering whatever garden questions you have. If you're interested in perk memberships, $3.99. I do this format 4 or 5 times a month. Answer the questions down for an hour. The group is a wonderful group, and all the people that have stars and circles are people that are in perk members or in a perk membership. And then my seed shop. So if you're interested in buying seeds, therustedgarden.com. I sell pepper seeds, tomato seeds for $1.75 a pack, and all the other seeds are $1.50. All right, I'm going to see if one last question popped in here, and then I'm going to go finish up my video on onions. So I see, what do you do to keep flies out of the garden? I don't have an answer for that. Sorry, I'm not even aware of chemical or light chemicals or organic that works, to be honest with you. All right, I will see all of you next time.